Hi everyone and welcome back. Before I get started on this lecture, I do just want to apologize in advance for any background noise that you might hear. I've tried to shut myself in my room, but I have two very mischievous cats that like to try to get my attention whenever I'm in the middle of something. So do keep that in mind. I apologize if there's any noise, but I'll do my best to speak clearly and loudly over any noise as it happens. Okay, so we are currently on our giving credit and avoiding plagiarism lecture. This is March 30th. All right, you should be watching this on Monday. Okay, so I did want to give a brief overview of the week before I dive in here. So if you take a look at your syllabus, oh, I already have a cat in here and I did not even realize. He is looking at me like he wants to get out. So let me open the door. Sorry, guys. Go on. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so overview of the week. If you look at the syllabus, you will notice that we had scheduled Dr. Melanie Yergo's talk for this week. Due to obvious reasons, that has been canceled, all right? And you should have read this in my weekly email. We're not going to be looking at her work. We're not going to be attending her talk. So that has been canceled. Because of that, there is a little gap in my schedule. And instead of assigning any new work, I decided to give us a couple of days off after this lecture for you to catch up on any work that you might have. And this does include your research paper. So do keep that in mind. After this lecture, we'll have a pretty sparse week. I do anticipate that lectures and things like free writes and writing activities, those will pick up significantly after we're done with our research papers. All right, so keep that in mind. Next, I want to review the Project 3 grading rubric. I uploaded that to WebCampus, and I will click over to that in a minute. So this is uploaded to WebCampus. Let me hop on real fast so I can show you where it is. Student view. All right, so it's right here on the home page. We've got Project 2 and then Project 3 right below it. This is what we're looking at for Project 3. Do note my little notation at the top here. So in addition to the below rubric, I will also be checking to make sure you have followed the posted directions for the assignment. I've said this over and over again, guys, just make sure that you are reading directions. Don't lose points over something silly like not reading directions. If you're just following everything, if you're using this rubric, you really shouldn't have a problem with getting a good grade. All right, I just ask that you read directions. You are looking at this rubric and you're asking me if you have any questions. So it's just well, I won't say it's brief, but it's a 2-page rubric. I couldn't fit it all on one page, so I'm going to be looking at ideas, and this includes things like your thesis. Are you responding completely to the assignment? Are you following directions? Are you critically evaluating sources? That kind of thing. We've got organization and coherence, support, and when I say support, I mean, are you using evidence to back up your claims? And we've talked about that a lot in class. Style, mechanics, and of course, documentation and your works cited page. And we're going to be talking a little bit about plagiarism today, how to avoid it, and the citation styles. So this dovetails, I think, nicely into what we're talking about today. But do please review this rubric when you get the chance and ask me if you have any questions. Okay, so let's dive right into this lecture. Do note, I have adapted a lot of this from one of my old mentors from UNLV, Dr. Amy Green. She has an excellent handout and presentation on avoiding plagiarism. I watched it as an undergraduate myself, and I found it to be very helpful. It's something that I've used for years and years. All right. So that's just my disclaimer up there at the top. So it is extremely important, especially in academia, and I have found in the majority of workplaces that you are acknowledging words and ideas that don't belong to you. All right? You should always be citing your sources, and you should always be acknowledging the things that you have not come up with yourself. So correctly citing your sources, it not only lends to your credibility as a researcher and an author, but it also allows you to avoid plagiarism. And as I'm sure you all know, plagiarism is the use of both words and ideas of others as if they were your own work. So this isn't just copying and pasting verbatim something that you find on the internet. Yes, that counts as plagiarism, but it's also the ideas of others, all right? It encompasses ideas. So if you did not come up with it yourself, you need to be citing it. And we'll be going into that in more detail in the next slides here. Okay, so there exists both intentional and unintentional plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism means that you knowingly and willfully stole someone else's work, you passed off someone else's ideas as your own, you may have purchased your work off the internet and stuck your own name on an essay that you didn't write. You also may have had a friend write a paper for you. Essentially, what all this means is that you turned in work that did not belong to you. All right, that's intentional plagiarism. Unintentional plagiarism means that you got sloppy. Maybe you were in a rush and forgot to document sources. Maybe you failed to look up how to cite something because you ran out of time and you didn't do it correctly. All right. Simply put, the university does not make a distinction between intentional and unintentional plagiarism. Ultimately, even if you forgot to cite a source or if you didn't know how to cite a source, it's your responsibility to make sure that you are doing that correctly. And this is listed in our syllabus as well, the academic dishonesty policy. It really is important that you are learning how to do this correctly. And if you do not know how to do it, you need to be asking questions and double checking. UNR is very strict about this. At the very least, if you are caught plagiarizing, whether intentional or not, you are supposed to be granted an F at the very least for the assignment, and we are required to report all of these to the Office of Student Conduct. So when in doubt, it's always better to oversight than not to cite at all. It's also always a good idea to just ask. All right, take the time and ask a question if you're unsure. I will never deduct points if you cite something that you shouldn't have cited, right? I would much rather you oversighted, okay? So what needs to be cited? Anything that you cite word for word must be cited. And I'm talking about direct quotes. So everything from a quote from a library book, all right, to song lyrics, anything that you are writing down word for word from someone else, that needs to be cited. If you include a chart, photo, graph, illustration, or another visual aid that you did not create, you need to cite that as well. If you include a video or an audio clip that you did not create, cite it. If you interview someone, you also need to cite them as the source of the information. All right? Basically, you need to cite any information or materials that you did not create yourself. Click. We're not moving forward and I'm clicking. Oops. And I just clicked through my entire slide. Sorry, guys. I've been having the worst technology luck lately, and it's just very frustrating. Okay. What else needs to be cited? So paraphrasing and summaries also need to be cited, and this is where I see a lot of students slipping up. All right. I can't talk again. If you're taking somebody else's ideas or data, and if you're just rearranging their words or even writing it in your own words, if those ideas do not belong to you, you still need to cite it. Other things that you need to cite: controversial information and information given in only a few sources. So something that is not common knowledge. And I have another slide on common knowledge coming up. And your textbook also goes into more detail with these. Oh, this is driving me crazy. Okay, what doesn't need to be cited? So this does tend to be a little bit of a gray area, especially when it comes to the issue of common knowledge. But again, I do ask you guys that if you are in doubt, just cite. All right, better to err on the side of caution. So there are certain sets of facts and information that are considered common knowledge. This means that these items are generally accepted by most reasonable people to be true. This might also mean information that the average person might know or be reasonably able to look up in an encyclopedia or other easily accessible reference. So the general rule here is if you find a piece of information cited in at least 3 to 5 credible sources, then that will usually fall under the realm of common knowledge. So common knowledge refers to something that the average educated reader would accept as reliable and or trustworthy without having to look up. And guys, it's really important that you know common knowledge often varies by audience. So what one field may consider common knowledge, it might not be well known by another group. And MIT put together this really good website if you're still confused about the issue of common knowledge. So this is Academic Integrity at MIT, a handbook for students. You can look this up. What is common knowledge? And they have a good definition here. And they also have very good examples. Okay, so how do I determine if the information I am using is common knowledge? So some examples: a description of the symptoms of Asperger's syndrome, Asperger's, can't talk, and I probably mispronounced that. Anyway, would need to be cited for a composition in a general writing class, but probably not need citation for an audience or graduate students in psychology. Another example here, a reference to the practice of fair value accounting would be understood by a group of economists, but would need citation to an audience of non-experts. So I think you guys get the point. A statement reporting that 24% of children under the age of 18 live in households headed by single mothers would need to be cited. This is information that would not be known to the average reader who would want to know where the figure was obtained. And that's a big one, guys. If you're citing any kind of statistics or figures or numbers that you did not calculate yourself, make sure you are citing that information because that is generally not common knowledge, and your readers do need to know where that information came from. Again, use this site, this MIT site. They have a lot of good examples here, and do ask me questions as well if you are confused. Okay, so we talked about common knowledge. Patch writing is another big thing, and your textbook talks about this a little bit. So patch writing refers to when someone's summary or paraphrase sticks too closely to the language or syntax of the original source. The writer might substitute some words, delete others, or rearrange some sentences, but overall their work too closely resembles that of the original source. And this is obvious when the two are compared. Patch writing often happens when someone doesn't fully understand the source that they are reading. Despite this, patch writing is still a form of plagiarism and it is not acceptable. So you need to make sure that you are practicing good citation techniques as well as direct quoting and paraphrasing. And there is a chapter on that in your textbook. Let me look it up real quick. Yes, it's quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing, chapter 25, page 512. So here's an example of patch writing. Right here you see there's an original passage, and you'll see these blue highlighted words here. So where mainstream sports typically refrain from displaying unapologetically violent acts, professional wrestling dives in head first. A large portion of wrestling's cultural appeal is generated by the psychological arousal/excitement provided by witnessing highly aggressive and violent forms of physical interaction in this sphere. So here is an example of patch writing, all right? And you'll see these blue highlighted words again, all right? They were highlighted here, and they're also found here in this example. So a few words have been changed here and there, but not enough has been done to make the attempted paraphrase different from the original. The blue text identifies words and phrases which occur in both the original and the attempted paraphrase. All right, so this attempted paraphrase right here, it's using too much of the original work, all right? So they're using the same syntax. A lot of these sentences follow the same format. Some words are switched out, but again, if you compare the two, and feel free to pause this video to compare, but if you compare the two, they really are way too similar. An acceptable paraphrase would be this right here. And if you compare this example to the previous two examples, you'll see that the ideas of the original are still present, but they are stated using different words. They're stated in the author's own words, and they aren't lifting certain phrases or anything like that, right? This is completely in their own words. So do take the time, if you're not sure, if you're not aware of what patch writing is, take the time to pause this video and just compare each of these examples. All right, on to MLA or APA format. There are tons of resources out there on correct MLA or APA formatting. There are a ton of different scenarios out there that you might use. I am going to ask that you please read chapter 27, and this begins on page 535 of your textbook. It highlights both of these systems, and it gives several examples. So there really shouldn't be an excuse as to why you do not know MLA or APA style. Don't be afraid to look it up, all right? Guys, I've been in school for so long now, I still haven't memorized MLA. I haven't memorized everything. I still need to look in the manual from time to time. So do make sure you are doing that. The UNR Libraries page also have up-to-date information on both of these styles. And I talked about this in class. Do try to avoid using citation generators unless you know for sure that they are generating the correct citations. I have found in general that things like EasyBib and those kinds of sites, I don't know why, but they always are not correct for the most part, okay? If you do choose to use these kinds of websites, make sure you're double checking, all right, to ensure that these are correct. Okay, we're not clicking over again. Huh. Here we go. All right, for next class, we will be diving into another round of peer review. This is happening next week. So make sure that you have a good draft of your research paper ready by then. Again, for the 100th time, I feel like, do email me with questions or concerns. I am here. I have access to everything, even though my technology is not always the best. Do make sure you are continuing to check in with me. It is a bummer that we can't meet face to face. I generally like to use class time to check in with everyone, but for now we're just going to have to make do and just use email from here on out. All right, so have a good weekend, everyone, and I will see you in the next lecture.